morning, everyone. Thank you, Mike. Awesome to see new entrepreneurs, people that are beginning this journey. Sound like that rocket's ready to take off very quickly. Good luck with that. It's very exciting. Like Mike was saying, serial entrepreneur, over 30 years experience, lots of different startups. I've got an MBA. And what I'm going to talk to you about is not necessarily case studies for the gentleman who's writing a book back there. Sorry, no case studies today. But more about my personal journey, my personal evolution through the things that I've done to floating, mindfulness, meditation, and arriving at this point in the, sort of this meditative space, what I've learned in retrospect about my life and identifying the patterns and things that I've done that I didn't recognize in real time as they were happening to me. So, and one of the key takeaways is the insights that I've now learned is how they too can fuel your passions on your journey as new entrepreneurs, or whatever career or profession that you're in. 4 years ago, I had my first float experience, and I'll talk more about what that is. I know it sounds a little bit sort of crazy. It certainly is. It used to be called sensory deprivation or isolation tanks. That language is far too ominous for us, of course. We call it float therapy. But 4 years ago, I had my first experience. Just randomly went and checked it out, and the state of quiet and calm and peacefulness that happened to me on that day. And I stepped out of the tank on that afternoon and decided that this was going to be my career for the rest of my life. So pretty big monumental shift. And it wasn't a career because I recognized business opportunity as much as it was that this is a tool that can help people. Why is this tool not on every corner? And my long view on this is that a decade from now, that it will be near as ubiquitous as yoga or Starbucks, maybe another decade after that. It's coming, and I promise you will hear more about this in the future. So I'm going to show you a short video. It talks about what floating is, much more sort of visual descriptive than me blathering about it. And so.
Effortlessly floating in 11 inches of warm and extremely salty water. The cabin-sized float tank is also soundproof and either dark or with very low light. Because of the minimal outside stimulation, it becomes a perfect environment for decreasing stress and practicing mindfulness. It is deeply relaxing, calming, and often a transformative experience.
So now, at least visually, you know what I'm talking about when I talk about using the term float tank. We actually call these float cabins. Back in the 80s when they were around, they were kind of a troop style. You crawl in and there was no light, and different thing. These are, as you can see, quite large. This year, we have 11 of these rooms, and this is what we call our float suite. There's a changing area right there, shower behind the glass, and then your own float tank right there. Each room's totally private. The experience lasts an hour when you're in the float tank. And my dream in doing this, nobody's ever built a float center, is what we call them, like we did. Not just on scale, but the amount of engineering and technology that went into it. There's a lot of unique things about sort of water quality and water temperature and air quality and temperature, and maintaining actually the CO2 levels within the environment while you're floating in there for an hour, because if you breathe in a paper bag after a while, CO2 concentrations go up. So there's a lot of tech involved in this, but my dream was to have the best sort of float tank experience I could possibly imagine. It was partly for my clients and partly just my own sort of interest in having more experiences in the float tank. So on my journey, what I realized now through mindfulness and meditation, that much of my personality and my traits and how and why I do things can be traced back to early childhood. And until now, I really wasn't able to pinpoint all the little pieces along the way. The elements that are consistent in my journey, somewhat typical of an entrepreneur, is risk, willingness to undertake it, competition, effort required. Certainly setting out on your own, as people that are beginning their careers will experience a great deal of effort as part of the fun and the interest. and also something that I call flow. That's a term that's sort of batted around a lot these days, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. So my childhood was pretty stark. I understand, my apologies, don't mean to be too somber, but it's the best way for me to illustrate the beginning of my life and what it felt like for me at the beginning. Very lonely. There was drugs and violence and lots of chaos in my house. But out of this is where the first bit of my patterns, my behavior emerged from, just primarily out of sheer desperation. And thus, the beginning of my entrepreneurial career, probably close to 40 years if I include this phase. What I realized early on is that money could buy me freedom to get out of where I was at. And I became very attracted to that. And whether I was mowing lawns, or babysitting, or cleaning up dog shit, or whatever, you know, it's been alleged that perhaps in high school I sold a bag of weed or two. Of course. So while I was doing this, while I was discovering the power of money and the freedom that provided me to get out of the environment that I was in, I also experienced my first taste of what I would call flow. And that was when I discovered running when I was 18 years old. And you know, my apologies if it sounds a little self-indulgent and it feels a little self-indulgent as I'm talking about this, is about sort of me, but the best way for me to kind of bring all this story together is to understand the very beginning, and hopefully by the end, as you go through with me on this journey, it will make sense to you, so please bear with me. You know, in running and the physical movement of it, it provided this flow state of calm and quiet and peacefulness in that. Because in the movement and in doing that thing, in the heavy exertion, those other things couldn't exist. They couldn't cohabitate the same space in my brain. And of course, you know, 30 years later, looking back on this or more, at the time I didn't realize what was going on, of course. I just knew that I was attracted to it because it made me feel better. And I became a rabid runner, ran my first marathon within a year of starting to run, just completely obsessed, because it was the alternative was to go back to where I came from. Also during this time, it became very clear to me that I had to do something to change the trajectory of my life. And so off to community college, first time. How I got through high school is basically a miracle. I cheated, I scratched, I lied, I did absolutely imaginable, but somehow or other they passed me through. And off to community college, was very happy to find out that they would take anybody with a high school diploma in community college. Upon arriving, realized I was basically illiterate. You know, had no idea what a paragraph even was. And so it was a bit of a journey to kind of get through that. And the effort that was required to change the trajectory of where I was at and where I came from, it was going to be huge. But again, the alternative was to go back to where I came from, and that certainly was no alternative. So I threw myself at what was in front of me and began the work. And interesting, my first semester, I'll share this and kind of move on, is I came across a philosophy club, and I thought it was just goddamn fantastic to be sitting around talking about ideas of how people think and why people think. Immorality was a thing. There's a right way and a wrong way. Oh shit, really? And you know, same thing, got completely absorbed and obsessed with this idea of critical thought and reasoning. And again, never exposed to it, no exposure. And so away we go. And so as I'm discovering flow and sort of intellectual pursuit, a path is opening in front of me. And the path, these are sort of some of my main passions and hobbies. From running, kind of moved on to these, what a lot of people would call very high-risk sort of adventure pursuits. Same thing as the running. I was attracted to the movement, I was attracted to the risk involved, but primarily what I was attracted to, and 30 years later I was able to figure out why I was attracted to it. Same thing, in these experiences, the noise cannot cohabitate. And this is sort of meditation or mindfulness, just in a different way. This is all flow stuff. Nothing else could be happening in my head. No traumas, no bullshit, no experiences in my past. And this stuff really, really shaped me in profound ways. It taught me to compete, tolerate and manage risk as an entrepreneur. That's the thing you're always doing. Where are the hard bits? Where am I going to stay? What am I going to stay away from? Where are the pitfalls? Also work incredibly hard, it's a recurring theme. And to accept loss and failure. As a competitive athlete, somebody is always better than you on any given day. Also in the business arena, you will fail. It happens. It's part of the thing. The goal, hopefully at the end, like me, after 30 some odd years, is to have just slightly more wins than losses. And that's precisely where I'm at. So, again, so rock climbing now, one of my great passions. Same thing in that space. Nothing else happens, nothing exists. The flow and present moment awareness, again, as I'm doing all these things throughout my career, not really recognizing what they are, but now through floating mindfulness much later on, oh, that's what I was doing. That's why I was doing that thing. So it's been very interesting in retrospect to understand all of this. Also, big goal setting. Those of you that are sort of setting out as entrepreneurs or young sort of college people that are looking at this and figure out what they're going to do, you're going to have to set some big goals, go after them. My advice is set them very, very high. And if you don't get quite over them, that's okay, but at least you tried. Don't put the bar too low, because if you clear that all the time, your life will not be very interesting. So my business, I'm sure most of you want to know sort of what have I done, talk about being a serial entrepreneur. I've owned probably 10 different businesses from the from the very beginning. My first early success, I owned a temp agency for medical personnel. 22 years old, made my first 150 grand. That was a long time ago. I had 15 employees. It was actually my senior project in undergraduate school. And it did really well for a long period of time. Had a business, manufactured kitchen utensils of all things, patented product, did relatively well. Business mostly went sideways after a while, chalk it up for experience. I had a mountain bike manufacturing company. Back early on, we made full suspension mountain bikes. Went from zero in revenue to acquisition within 18 months, which was very fascinating. Quite a journey. I was racing bikes at the time, fell into this thing, leased a big machine shop, started production, got acquired by a Taiwanese manufacturer, like I said, 18 months later. Got a return of capital, made a couple $100,000, also lost $500,000 in the transaction. We transferred technology to Taiwan. They set up production. Once they had everything, including all our CAD drawings for the next 2 years of production, stopped payment. They had basically assets onshore in the United States that we were going to go after as our protection. Within 2 days, they liquidated that commercial asset, and I got fucked for $500,000. So that was, anyway, that was a long time ago.
Funny story.
Yeah, lots of fun, right? Some success, some failure, some sideways. But sort of continued confidence. I know I have some idea of what's going on. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. And I think, like any good entrepreneur, at least partway through the career, I needed a new goal. I needed a new target. So I'm going to go to B school and get an MBA. Not quite sure why, but I figured every good entrepreneur must have one. And for me, my MBA career, given my sort of undergraduate career and my very, sort of humble academic career and trying to get going, I went to a top 20 school. I'm happy to report that I still have the lowest GMAT score they ever admitted to that school. Thank you. Based off of my ability to write and my personal essay and my journey of how I got there, and my business acumen, they let me in on academic probation. And you had to do 3.75 first semester. Of course, I graduated 4.0, top of my class. And it wasn't because I had high intellect, it was because I could work my ass off, and nobody would work harder than me. I sat there with kids and professionals that were far smarter than me in sort of the traditional sense. I understand as a competitive athlete, you recognize pure talent and I can recognize pure intelligence, and I didn't have it. And but same thing through effort and just the realization that I was going to be able to get this done. And last thing, I'll just sort of going to expensive private school like that where the tuition checks are just massive. I wrote those checks out of my checking account with my money that I had earned. It wasn't mama's money, it wasn't a loan, I paid for it. And it was pretty fantastic to sit there. Of course, it kind of made me an ass in class because I'm sitting there, $1,000 a class, and I'm like, you better deliver, man. So pattern, to this point, is frenetic work and frenetic play, back and forth. And I would use work as a tool to do what I really wanted to do, was to find the quiet again in my head. And so I would go through these periods of whatever new project of work, 2-3 years intense, 80-100 hours, and then I would stop and I wouldn't work at all, and I would take 2-3 years off and I would just play or travel or go after these things. And that pattern, I mean, it's been pretty consistent. I've done that probably half a dozen times throughout my career. 2 on, 3 off, whatever, back and forth. And I presumed that that pattern would sort of persist for the rest of my career. And it didn't, because I found and discovered floating. And this is a bit of a fun photo. We were having a photo shoot. I had a bunch of models there, and the idea is, of course, meditating on top of the water and whatever, they let me get in front of the camera. And through this, it kind of unified the two parts of my life, this thing of work and play. It allowed me to bridge between them and understand the connection between the two and the flow state and the quiet that I was craving. However, now building the world's largest float center, and ambition is to build 100 more of them. It's been, in the last 4 years, the work pace has been insane. I work constantly, nonstop, still not less than 80 hours a week. In 2 years, I had 5 days off. It's just been absolutely on a tear. And through that period, have been unable to pursue my other hobbies and things to get me out and get out of my head and get quiet again. However, now that I have access to floating, and now I'm a daily meditator, I can find that same bit of quiet and calm without putting myself out there. Dear God, I miss it, and I want to go back to it, and I will at some point, but for now, this has been able to sustain me and keep me going along. Hello, darling. So, as had been the pattern for me, my dream was pretty big, build this big, crazy float center. This is our building. I'll move pretty quickly through this, but it took us a year to find the space that we were going to occupy here in Pasadena. Really had to find the perfect building, pretty unique requirements. It's a 5,000 square foot building across the street from Target parking lot, north on Hudson, up in Colorado. There's 25 offices in there, and went in and proceeded to just knock the whole thing apart. And to, because maybe you can imagine a building sort of float tank experience is totally different than anything else. You can't just drop it in the middle of a room. So, and hopefully, as I get to the end, some of you will come and visit us. So lots of challenges, new business, new space. The city was an absolute nightmare to deal with. What the fuck is a float tank? What are you doing? What are you doing here? We have no idea what this stuff even is, and it was disastrous to say the least. We had lots of delays, and the short version is it cost us twice as much money and twice as much time as we thought. Yes. So had to dig, my business partner and I had to dig very, very deep to get this thing open, because once we started, there was no returning. Couldn't give the building back, it was underway. So, and of course along the way I decided we wanted to design and manufacture our own float tanks. I couldn't buy them off the shelf, I wasn't happy with that. So also part of the extra expense projected maybe a couple $100,000 in development. It was probably close to $500,000 by the time we were done. But we now have the coolest float tanks on the planet. And we own the tooling. So we're open, and we've been open for 18 months now. We experienced pretty rapid growth early on. We've done probably over 40,000 floats since we opened. We're currently the busiest float center in the world, which is pretty cool in 18 months. So, some of our press, the beginning of last year, we were pretty much tearing the press apart. As you can see, lots of recognizable brands, they were coming in and interviewing us and shooting video and live satellite feeds and trucks and all this stuff. And it was pretty, it was exciting, it was fun. And I thought for sure last springtime, cool, we got it in the bag. This is exactly as I saw my dream. Not exactly. Business is good, but it's not great. Certainly not enough to justify the amount of money that we spent. And certainly the idea of the people that know me and have worked with me before, the idea of scaling and building another 10 or then another 100, I got to get this one right before I'm going to be able to get access to that big pile of money. And so I still have some work to do. Certainly made mistakes early on, new business, new space, nobody's ever done it before. Learn, don't make them again. Client adoption with floating is probably one of our biggest challenges, as you can imagine. This thing sounds totally bizarre and it's hippy-dippy and what are you talking about? So getting people in the float tank for the very first time is one of our challenges, just because it does sound so foreign and alien. Also, our long-term conversion is currently an issue for us, getting people to understand the benefits of doing this long-term. We have lots of people that come, they'll do a one-off, go home, post on Facebook, tell their friends they did it, and then sort of go back to their life, not understanding the power of this thing and what it can do for them long-term. And I'll talk about that now. So, I remain, despite the challenges of where we're at, and like I talked about, this idea of long-term conversion for clients, I remain convinced that floating is going to be here for a very long time. I continue to experience great change through floating and through mindfulness. We have hundreds of clients that float with us regularly, like on a weekly basis, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't have somebody standing in my lounge area hugging me and crying and saying, thank you for building this. So the fulfillment in this is spectacular. And when the money comes along, that will also be spectacular. But for now, I work. Also talk about sort of briefly, I have a typical entrepreneur's dilemma. This is a bit kind of dangling out there, but I figure it's kind of worth throwing out there. I'm mildly delusional. I completely overestimate my own abilities, and I have a tendency to underestimate risk. And however, without those things, nothing gets done. So as you're looking at evaluating opportunities, when you're hearing you're nuts, that's probably because you a little bit are if you're going to launch. So just get used to that feeling. I've got a video here that I'd like to show you that is a friend of mine talking about, he's a full-time neuropsychologist researching floating. He's working with a team of other neuroscientists or neuroscientists out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they are doing all the physiological monitoring. They're doing fMRI, pre and post float. It's a multi-million-dollar setup. And what they're finding is pretty profound. So,
right now, everything is preliminary. We're the first people who have developed tools to actually measure these things during the float itself. But what I can tell you is, looking at this preliminary data, we are finding very large drops in all the primary indicators of stress. We're seeing blood pressure going way down. We're seeing heart rate going way down. We're seeing respiration going way down. We're seeing your brain waves going way down. Essentially, your entire nervous system is going into a state of quiescence or relaxation. So any sort of stress-related elements are obviously going to get some degree of benefit from flotation.
So he has the qualifications to talk about it much greater than me, of course. So the results that we're seeing that we get back, what he's finding, the effects that he's finding, but also what we see on a regular basis in our center, the effects on stress, anxiety, depression, insomnia, actually pain relief. We have a handful of people we treat for PTSD. Of course, I can't make these claims in my advertising. Of course, you would freak out if you even heard me talking about all these things. You have to wait till the research is in. Kind of yes, but we see it on a daily basis. So we're incredibly excited. So why floating? Why meditation? Why mindfulness? Why now? The pace at which we operate is continuing to accelerate. I think everybody's aware of this. Everything is buzzing or whirring, or their faces are jammed in their phone, and what's happening to me. And I think people are hungry for a bit of quiet. They're just not quite sure why or how they're going to get there with the vehicle to do it. Can I see a show of hands of who here has tried meditation before? Take a look around. And how many of you are still regular meditators? Wow, bravo! That is huge. Usually it's like maybe less than 10%. So yeah, well done to those of you that are still at it. But for the other, whatever, so 75 or 80% that are out there, I learned to to meditate through floating, and you can too. And my story is that I had tried meditating several times before with guided meditation prior to discovering floating, completely failed. As I say, the little hamster on the wheel, he's too crazy, he's too strung out all the time on caffeine, he can't relax. But being in the float tank is the perfect vehicle for being still and for being quiet when all the stimulation is removed from you. And for me, what it did is it allowed me the confidence to know that I could do it, that I could be quiet. And so then I was able to, after a year of floating, it occurred to me, wow, I'm kind of meditating. Tried it again, pick it up. Now I'm a regular and daily meditator, and it will be that way for the rest of my life. And I know that given the amount that I work, I don't have time to sit around and meditate for 20 minutes or float for an hour or do anything for that matter that's not effective on a regular basis. And that's the first thing people think, well, I don't have time. Well, you know what? Neither do I. But it works. So that would be my encouragement to you. And in all the mayhem, even this guy, Don Draper, Mad Men, even he eventually figured it out that there was a great deal to be had in that sense of still and quietness. Besides what I talk about with floating, I think mindfulness in general. Originally, when I was going to give this talk, I thought I was going to stand up here and talk about mindfulness and meditation and the benefits of all of that, and it's just like, yeah, I could. It would be a little bit lecture-like. I think everybody's kind of aware of the benefits that can be had with it, so we'll kind of leave that somewhere else, or hopefully you'll come float with us and we can teach you how to meditate in a float tank. But what it's done for me is my ability to manage stress. Also my reactivity in situations when things are not going my way. Also human connection, which is very interesting. Allows me to be more present. And my human connection is, not just with my wife or with my daughter, but my staff and just people in general around me. I am more connected. I am more present. And also the ability to remain related to reactivity, but calm under pressure. Everybody's under some sort of pressure, and if you're an entrepreneur, you're going out on your own. Everybody at some point experiences a great deal of pressure and they're not quite sure what to do with it. And I promise you, through mindfulness, you can learn to manage that a little bit. Anyway, thank you for letting me share my story. My apologies, a little bit self-indulgent. Hopefully you got a few little nuggets out of there. And I'm hopeful that somewhere in there, that my journey has illuminated something in you, in your story, and you're intrigued enough to give floating a try. Mm-hmm. So, and it's certainly the easiest form of mindfulness, and I definitely promise it can improve your life. So, anyway, come check us out. We've got a bunch of postcards laying around, special offer for people for Innovate Pasadena, get a discount and all that, so check it out or ask any questions, and I'm around if you have any questions.
Yeah. We're going to open up to Q&A now, but just want to say thank you so much for sharing that inspiring story. I think some of us here that are self-made in ways did come from a similar upbringing where maybe they were a little disenfranchised or marginalized, and I empathize with that. And it is a struggle, but it creates the character that's required to build something big, and not just, literally the biggest flotation therapy center in the planet. But also a big vision, and I commend you on that, and thank you so much. Anyway, again, we're going to open up to Q&A. John's going to walk around with the mic. If you have a question, raise your hand. Please ask questions. You can share your comments and stories offline. You're going to be hanging out with us for a little bit afterwards?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so comments later, questions now. Thanks.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for the talk. It was awesome. I have two quick questions. Hopefully quick.
Sure.
The first, you had mentioned when you were showing kind of your extreme sports that you get into, mm-hmm. and how you have to focus on those, and that kind of was your first mindfulness, right? Mm-hmm. Where do you see the distinction between having to focus so you don't die, and being able to float in the tank and just relax? That's the first question.
So say that a different way? What is the actual bridge?
Well, it's not the bridge. I guess so, yeah. How do you
become quiet in the float tank?
Yeah, because your first experience with it was kind of being quiet because you had to focus or get hurt, right?
Yeah. my first experience in the float tank and how it went and how I was able to find that quiet, I'm not quite sure. The place I went, it was, they were very warm, they were very kind, they gave me enough instruction, gave me kind of some breathing tips and kind of counting exercises. And I'm not sure why I latched onto it so fully and that quickly. That my story is certainly unusual in that I latched onto it and like I told my wife when I step out, I'm like done and selling a business and changing careers. But certainly we have people, probably 25% of the people that come with us have their first experience, come out and they're like, whoa, like that was amazing. There's something about that environment that as it's removing all the stimulation into your brain, that your brain cannot help but slow down because there's just nothing going on for it to feel or process.
Right.
I hope that kind of
a little
bit.
Absolutely. It's more of the environment actually doesn't allow you to.
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
For sure. Cool.
Yeah. Second question is, aside from the customer retention, what do you feel is your most challenging hurdle to overcome?
That's pretty much it. Everything stems out of there. We've got 15 new projects in play to address that particular issue. But that's pretty much it. Is it? Yeah. Thanks. You're welcome.
So, kind of piggybacking off your question. So you have this amazing vision, and as most entrepreneurs find it, it's a great big bang when you start. So how are you? What are the things you're doing to try to sustain and to get repeat customers and things like that? What are sort of your tactics and strategies?
Yeah, so we have because of floating itself, it's pretty remarkable, and people that do it, they tend to have really good, high quality experiences and they want to tell their friends. So we have a really good high referral rate, which I'm delighted with. So we can attract people. Like last month, we had 800 first-time floaters that came and floated with us. We currently are converting them to repeat floats about 20% of the time. Looking to get that to 30% by the end of the year. There's some things with in-store communication with my staff that we're working on. We're training, doing sales training, and trying to. I have to be very careful because I'm super sensitive about the whole training thing. The floating thing is such an intimate, personal environment that the explanation of the benefits and what we can provide and how we can help people. That's the language that we use, and I'm focused on this. Even the idea like doing sales is like freaks me out. On the retention thing, the one thing, probably the largest mistake that we made was creating a sense of community. And so we'll have people that will come in, and because we're so large and we do so much volume, we'll do whatever 100 floats on a given day. People will come have these really amazing, profound experiences, and they'll leave. And they're not connecting with other people that are also having similar experiences. And so starting next month, we're going to have basically weekly events, free weekly events for our members to come float. And that will be a whole series of, we'll do guided meditation one night, I'll give a talk on whatever pro float tips, we'll do a sound bath the following week, we'll do a diet and nutrition class, but basically to have more community events so people can be there. Also sort of things like this, people out in the community, and it's really just a kind of, at the end of all of that, to kind of tighten it up, it's just communication. It's client communication of what we can provide and how we can help people and sort of do that better.
Are you using social media much?
Yes, we spend a great deal of money on social media.
For example?
Well, Facebook is our big driver. We spend between $5,000 and $6,000 a month on Facebook advertising alone. We have a whole team of people, sort of manage lots of things, sort of all under my kind of moving pieces around. But yeah, it's fairly, scaling a business this size in a whole new space. It's been interesting. So.
And you're seeing an ROI, a return on your investment for Facebook?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Yeah. So for lack of a better word, yeah, still not super happy with it, and I'm hoping to slow down on the Facebook stuff by the end of the year, because it's just an enormous amount of money on a monthly basis. I'm trying to shift over to a few other things. So.
Next question, Frank.
Hi. So I was curious about two things. One is like if you've been experimenting with pricing and packaging and things like that, but also given the relationship to mindfulness, meditation, other things in that area, it sounds like you're doing some events. I didn't know if you're also trying to do partnerships or thinking about how you create the next space, if you have more space for those related activities, things like that?
Yeah, we are setting up partnerships with people around in the community. We've done a little bit of that. Ours has been probably more of a shotgun approach, just to kind of get the awareness out. Now we're getting really focused and choosing the people that we want to partner with. Who are the people who have the muscle that can help us? Certainly lots of people want to partner with us, given our size and our scale, but it's got to be a reciprocal arrangement. So we have a few people that we're starting to work with, and we'll do more of that. And we're going to be, of course, I'm starting having conversations with JPL and Caltech and Art Center, and places like this to they have mass, they have scale, they have people, and so starting to partner with them. So yeah, definitely coming.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for the presentation. I am the founder of the Holistic Chamber of Commerce, so I have tried floating.
Awesome.
And actually, when I was walking out of the float tank, what occurred to me is we have a couple of, and yes, we're entrepreneurs, so we're under a lot of stress, but there are some segments of our society that are under even higher stress levels all the time, specifically our police and some of our highly chaotic neighborhoods. And there potentially would be funding for those groups to experience floating. Are you spending some time and putting some efforts into reaching out to those groups?
That's a great question, a great point. It's certainly something that we've thought about, are aware of. I know I have some friends in a couple float centers up in Vancouver, and I know that they're working closely with their fire departments up there. They've got a program. We haven't done anything down here yet. Certainly we will going forward. Sort of new business, limited resources. It's kind of low-hanging fruit first, and that's kind of a longer relationship-driven thing that frankly just sort of don't have the time or the resources right now for. But it is coming, and for sure in the future we will.
Over here.
Hi, meditator.
I actually had a question for you about your meditation practice. As a regular meditator, did you find that you developed your own style that worked for you, or do you use a specific technique?
Yeah, my style is freestyle. Yeah, I have probably a dozen different techniques that I draw from, and it kind of depends on where I'm at or what I'm doing or how I'm feeling. Body scan, breath work, mantra based.
Whatever you need.
They have sort of lots of different tricks, and having spent, I don't probably have close to 400 floats now, even given my frenetic work thing. Spend a lot of time sort of exploring all of this stuff. Basically everything.
And then similar to what the last woman was just asking, there are a lot of people in the community who do need exposure to something like this, and it doesn't have to be someone who just can't afford it. It can be people who are struggling, like police officers who have PTSD. And I'm doing some research for a project for school right now about the unfair justice system, and so much of what's going on is people reacting in stress. And there's just not enough training for these individuals to handle stress and to manage their reactions. And so I wanted to know if you thought about trying to speak to the police officers or the fire department.
Absolutely.
Even in schools.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm definitely, the idea with building a big place like this was to help as many people as we possibly can, and that would just be sort of a market segment is how I would look at it. They're certainly underserved, and they definitely need it, but just the same thing, haven't been there yet. But when the opportunity comes to go speak to them, absolutely, I'm in. So if you know somebody and you can put me in front of them, have a chat.
Over here.
Hi. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for sharing the more courageous parts of your presentation. I was just curious because my millennial brother has kind of bought into this idea of float tanks. I haven't tried it because I'm a bit skeptical, so I'm now open. But I guess I'm curious to know about any kind of generational trends that you've seen in your business and challenges there in terms of if you're even thinking about marketing to with respect to other non-millennial generations.
Certainly, the millennials are more open to adopt new things. The demographic that we serve has been very difficult to identify and does target for Facebook. because it's kind of all over the road. I mean, universally, people benefit from being mindful, having a float experience, and so is it like more specific? Is your question more specific about the kinds of communication we're doing to them, or are we trying to segment them and speak to them in a different way?
I guess I was more so curious to know if you're targeting more of the Generation X kind of individuals, or have specific marketing strategies that allow you to take in more of that business.
Yeah,
to benefit those individuals, because that may not be as open.
Yeah, market segmentation and where we're most effective, that's something that we're still developing and we're still learning from right now. At first it was just open the door, shotgun everybody, come and figure, and we've had some success at that, but now as we're kind of going to the next stage, the next level, really trying to hone our tools and figure out like where we're getting the most ROI in which channel and the method of communication. So absolutely, yes, we are doing that.
Thank you.
Time for one more question.
Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
I could see this having application for people in medical situations, either really acute or really chronic. And my imagination about a person in that situation is that they would have a hard time getting into a tank or something like that. I wonder how you approach helping people who might have mobility problems.
Kind of two things there. The one room that you saw there, we have 10 of them that are sort of that, and we have one other, what we call, we have the only specifically ADA approved float tank in the country, because the city demanded that we put one in, even though no other float center in the country has one. So it's just whatever, long story, sorry for the digression. But the 10 rooms that we have, what I tell people is if they can step into a bathtub, they can step into a float tank. That's kind of the general concept. There's grab bars and there's things around. It's probably slightly easier than even stepping in a bathroom. The threshold to get into it's only 18 inches high, and there's big grab bars to kind of get in and out. For more mobility issues in our ADA tank, we've got a thing where people can back their wheelchair in. There's a big long transfer bench there. It's all wide open. There's no wall. There's no door on it. So plenty of room to get people in and out. And we've had not as many as I would have hoped. We've had one quadriplegic and a couple paraplegics in there, and they of course have to bring their aid and sort of get them in and out. But it's been interesting. I'm hoping to do more of that as well, because I think that some of the letters and things that I've seen from people that have had those sort of issues that have been able to get in the float tank regularly, they report just amazing things.
Actually, I have a quick question regarding the solution. What are the solutes that you use in your flotation tanks?
Epsom salt.
Epsom salt. So it's just like super saturated Epsom salt.
Yeah. Each tank has 1,300 pounds of salt in it. So it's like a half a pallet.
There's probably recycling or dispensing and renewing of the solution issue, isn't there?
Yeah, on the back of the wall, you can't see, there's a big pool pump and filter and sort of system that all works. We run the water through the purification system 4 complete times between each client.
Oh, nice.
And we use a combination of hydrogen peroxide and big ultraviolet sterilizers to disinfect the water.
Okay.
The water is sublimely clean.
Yeah, because otherwise we'd be going through a ton of magnesium sulfate.
Yeah, there's about $600 worth of salt in each tank. So
wow.
Not dumping it every time for a $40
right.
load.
Excellent. And the follow-up to that is, as a health professional, I'm aware of the benefits of magnesium. And a lot of people, you can go to Target and get some Epsom salts, put it in your own bathtub, albeit not in that concentration. Have you looked at just the isolated benefit of exposing yourself to high levels of magnesium sulfate, Epsom salt, and how much actually gets absorbed into the body through the skin?
Yeah, my friend Justin at the research place, believe it or not, there's an Epsom salt council, and there is one, and they actually gave him money last year to conduct the research. They gave 75 grand to do this series of 12 clients, or 12 whatever patients, and basically the results were inconclusive. They need to do more research.
So it's kind of hard to extrapolate.
So basically the evidence of magnesium absorption and the method in which they were collecting the data was not that effective. So they have to do like muscle testing, I guess, to see. And it wasn't just the blood draw was not what they needed to do, and so they got to sort of do it again. Okay. So we'll see. I don't know. I don't make the claim about magnesium absorption yet.
Right. It would be interesting to see the science and the data substantiate.